Hi, I'm Stephen from Flivver Channel. Joining me today is Clay from the YouTube channel Cast Iron Machines. Clay has a passion for antique steam era tools. He's restored a number of 100-year-old line shaft and belt-driven machine tools, which he uses for projects in his off-the-grid 1920s style workshop. He has some blacksmithing skills too. On top of that, he drives a 1928 Model A two-door sedan. Clay, welcome to Flivver Channel.
Pleasure to be here.
Let me start by saying I'm fascinated with these old tools like you are, but I don't have any. Whenever I'm in an old building and I see the line shaft in the ceiling, I always check out the bearings and try to figure out where the machine room was and all that sort of thing. And then any old photographs I see of an old factory with all the leather belts coming down from the line shafts to the ceiling always catches my attention. I think it's just such an incredible, elegant solution that they found in those days, whether it be driven by water or a small steam engine, or I guess in later days, gasoline engines, but I'm sure we can talk about that some more. You're the expert for sure. So thanks for joining me today. It's been something we've been both planning to do for a while, so it's great
Quite
to
a
get a
while.
chance to talk to you. And we are doing it in the winter as we imagined, but it's not your typical winter. It's kind of warm. It's been warm here for weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty mild out. I still have the potbelly stove running in the corner of the shop just to keep it nice, but
Mhm.
yeah, I could probably get away without it, to be honest.
Right on. Yeah, it's a strange winter. Not very cold. Do you have any snow left?
Yeah, we have still a foot in most
Okay.
places, but it's covered in a good layer of ice from the warmth and the rain and whatnot. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
no, it's pretty nice up here. This little shop that I'm in on this farmstead was the pigsty originally. Oh, well, I should go back. We were told that this building was built as the original dwelling while they were building the main house. So a family of about 13 lived in here, and I'm located just east of Ottawa. So
Mhm.
this gang lived in here as they built the main house. Once the main house was built, they jacked this up and put a cement concrete knee wall, I guess you could call it, and they made it into a pigsty. So this was the farmstead's pigsty, and there were some dividing walls, and the floor slumped about a half foot or a foot from corner to corner because the ground's clay and the buildings tend to kind of
Yeah.
droop into the ground.
Yeah.
So I went about, and the first order of business was to get rid of the old kind of sections that were made out of busted old concrete and then lay some gravel down just to give it a level floor. And it's also easier on the feet on the back, I find,
Mhm.
while ripping around. And then uh, a lot of these old shops were done with hardwood on the edges or with the end grain up with a bunch of blocks, almost like tiles of end
Mhm.
grains of wood, hardwood, so it wouldn't burn. But I find it's the best with this gravel, so I'm not scared of a haywire spark going the wrong way.
Sure. Yeah, just
Um,
don't drop a small part, right?
yeah, that yeah, preach to that. My goodness, the amount of bearings and little screws. We call them wee parts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wee little
Oh, and then they go
parts. Yeah.
wee, and you're gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. Oh, neat.
hmm
So you're in the pigsty, so to speak.
I'm in the pigsty. So yeah, about 6 years ago, this was still pigsty status.
Hmm.
And then over time, it started really with a forge. It's just over to the side of me there. It's a what they call a siding forge, what the old timers call a siding. So little railroad sidings would have a shop for doing bare bones maintenance, and they'd have this style. It's a pretty basic, semi-portable. This one, there's a big wing nut. You can take the blower off the back to lighten it,
Hmm.
and it doesn't have the conventional cast fire pot. It just has kind of a cast domed grill. And so in the case of this one, I've taken river clay or creek clay and kind of made a fire pot out of that, and then it would have burned whatever coal was available. I started by burning anthracite coal, which is a higher purity, but also harder to burn. It won't smolder once the air lets off. And that was just a pain with a hand crank blower because it would die so readily. So this is bituminous, the old style smithing coal that I burn now. And the whole idea with this place, it kind of took a crazy turn. The origin was I was given a sawmill from up the road. Turn of the century circular sawmill, a 48 or 52-inch circular blade on it from my good buddy's dad, who was it had sat outside for a long time. He ran it as a revenue machine when he was a younger fellow, and it sat out because the vital parts are cast or like shafts of iron, and then what they call the husk, where all the belts and stuff sit, and then the carriage and the rails are all wood bodied. So this was hardwood. It sat outside, so it was there enough that I could take the dimensions off of it, but not there enough to use. It was all slumped and kind of shot the bed effectively. So the idea was I needed to get a forge to fix the metal parts on it and then restore the sawmill. Well, the sawmill still isn't built, and this shop has just snowballed en masse to
Yeah,
being a miniature industrial revolution rural repair shop. So
yeah.
there have been lots of old timers visit, come by, and I try to listen as much as I can. For example, one fellow from up the road who's since passed away said the old shop there was run line shaft. It was his first taste of De Kuyper gin when he went to visit. And he said they ran a line shaft and it was run with an old Model A engine.
Oh, no
Model A
kidding.
engine, they cut
Yeah.
it off at the end of the transmission, threw a flat
Mm-hmm.
belt on there, good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Electricity only came to this road in 1952 or so.
Okay.
So
Now,
yeah.
do you still live on the farm as well, or is
This is the family's farm, so yeah, I'm mostly here, and it's just a small plot anymore. The land was sold off prior to us buying it, but this place we're very fortunate, very lucky, because all of the original buildings from the farm set are here. So we have chickens in the chicken coop. This
Mhm.
is the pigsty. The granary is the carport, and then the implement shed is more storage, and then the dairy barn is more storage. But they're all here and in reasonable shape, so we're very thankful for that.
Mhm. Storing rusty old tools that you still have to restore?
No shortage. Yes, the lineup is quite great indeed, I tell you.
You'll need to take on an apprentice soon.
Yeah, yeah, there are possibilities of that. Even yeah, no, for sure. When you look at this stuff and how long it can last and basically be revitalized perpetually, you kind of start to wonder beyond yourself what will become of it. And
Mhm.
even, a fellow of my age is it's still a curious thought to ponder.
Yeah, it's like our old cars. They're, a lot of people say, oh, we're just caretakers till the next generation. And it kind of makes sense because if you start thinking back, they've been owned by a lot of other people before us, usually. And
Yeah.
they'll be still around and working if they're looked after long after we're gone. So,
Do you know the lineage of your Model T?
not much. I bought it from, well, my father bought it from a fellow in Woodstock who bought it out of Wisconsin in the early 2000s. That's all
Okay.
I know. That's
Huh.
all we know about it. Um, yeah, and I've just been repairing it and running it ever since. Yeah. What about you've got a 28 Canadian Model A, right?
Yeah, the 28 two-door is pretty neat. I don't have it on paper, but by word of mouth from the fellow that I bought it from, Vic, he he daily drove it in the sunny seasons.
Mhm.
He put 5,000 miles on it a season, like easily. He drove it around the rock. They took it out to Newfoundland and
Wow, that's
back.
an
They took it down to
adventure.
New York City. Vic was a hardcore Model A driver in the clubs. I haven't been able to yet take a big tour with it. It needs a couple little tweaks, but it's a good, as Paul Shin would say, it's a good sorted runner of a car.
Mhm.
So as far as I know, it was sold into Alberta. It was made in Windsor, sold into Alberta. It stayed with that family for most of its years, and then it got a bit decrepit and whatnot. It was picked up, brought back to Ontario. That fellow, I don't know the name, kept it sitting in a garage, and Vic bought it from that fellow in
Mhm.
around the year, I want to say 2000, and then up to 2010 or so. Vic completely restored it. I believe the colors on it, the Niagara blue, and then there's the strip where the ridge is halfway up the body, is a bit of a darker blue. I believe those are the original colors that it was from the factory with.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. The is it an early A? Has it got the brake lever on the left and the multi-plate clutch?
It should have been, well, how would I say that? I believe it was an early A because the universal joint housing has that little protrusion off of it that would have supported. I think that's what supported the cross shaft linkage for the driver's side e-brake originally. I believe
Okay.
that's still there, but I don't remember what Vic told me if he had it converted.
Hmm.
I can't tell if there was ever a multi-plate clutch. It's a standard one in it now.
Right.
I don't know what the difference would be if there were dimensional distances other than the or differences other than the housings.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well, so
no,
it's
I
either
don't
it
know.
either was one of those or it was right in the transition where some of the parts were
Yeah,
still, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, interesting.
highly likely transitional.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, it
And
has one drum tail light like a Model T as well.
right.
Single drum tail light. It has the lenses and the headlights are straight. It's just a circle of glass with the straight lines. They
Yeah.
haven't gone to the with the little accent in the bottoms yet.
Yeah.
And what else? Well, being that it's a Canadian Model A, it has a hole in both frame rails for the steering box to go through to avoid the tax that would have come if they were American going to Australia. It was like a Commonwealth avoidance of tax. It could be switched. There's a couple neat videos on how they switched the steering box and the funky linkage they needed to add to get the accelerator to work right.
Anything to
And
avoid taxes. That's a
yeah,
constant of life, isn't it?
yeah, times haven't changed all that much.
That's right.
Yeah, the other thing that's, I guess, particular to Canadian Model A's is the logo on the rad shell, the Ford crest. We think of
Hmm.
Ford now being the fancy Ford script with a light blue. Uh, the Canadian cars are an extremely dark blue, borderline black. Some people
Hmm.
look at it and think it's black enamel, but it's a
Hmm.
really deep, deep, deep blue enamel. That's all that comes to mind with the real differences of it. Oh, and of course the Robertson screw.
Yes, I still have to
Yes.
do a whole video on the Robertson screw
Well, I'm looking
thing.
forward to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's a US car, so it's a lot more a lot easier to get detailed information about and matching parts and that sort of thing. But it is kind of a shame that I don't have a Canadian car.
Yeah. Oh, what the heck was that?
You got a bat?
I don't know. Pardon my ignorance, but were Model Ts ever made in Canada?
Yeah, 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 they were.
Oh,
Well, from the early days. Oh yeah, yeah. You
really?
could. There's Canadian Model Ts, and just like the A's, they shipped from Canada all over the Commonwealth. It
Yeah.
was the main factory for many years.
Where was
So,
the plant?
same one, Windsor. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Huh.
And they started out being all right-hand drive, and then they switched and started doing both. Trying to think what other some of the other weird differences are. The
Yeah.
Robertson screws, a few little things like that. Obviously, in the earliest days, they were a lot different because you had different coach builders and that
Right.
sort of thing. But even all the castings on the engine, say made in Canada, obviously rather than made in the US. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a made in Canada engine that's just um, under a floor right now. Someday I need to dig it out and see if it's any good. I know nothing about it. It's just a complete engine and transmission that's sitting there, and I don't know a thing about it, and I don't know any history, no story, other than
Hmm.
it's a very new serial number, like late 27. It must be one of the very last engines off the line.
Yeah. Neat.
So someday I'll dig that one out and open it up and see what we've got there. But it's kind of neat to
Yeah,
at least have made in Canada motor.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So do you drive your car regularly or only for special events?
Absolutely, drive it regularly. I try to avoid the rain, but it doesn't ruin my day if I come across a wet encounter. Everything about it is set to be a real driver of a car. Vic made some very tasteful updates to it. I'm a traditionalist. I won't hide it. I don't think anything is really
Really?
hiding.
That's such a
Yeah,
surprise.
about that. But Vic added some tasteful things. For example, you'd only really notice if you look under it. He added coil springs. So the original shocks were viscous dampers. It was just like an arm inside of a reservoir of oil with um, little holes, so it would kind of slow the movement. But he added coil springs, so it greatly reduces your body roll when you're going around corners. Um, he put blinkers on. They're LED blinkers. They work great. The only thing that I have conflict there is the little control box makes a very robotic beep. It, something goes on up there that doesn't compute. Anyway, they work well. He added an LED brake light strip in the bottom of the back window, so it's not
Mhm.
really visible, but it adds a lot to just a little. The old drum tail lights are like a lantern at the end of the hallway, so
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like to
that adds a
drive
lot.
mine. I don't like to drive mine in the dark because
Oh yeah,
the
understandable.
lighting in general is just atrocious. So
Yeah,
is yours still 6 volt?
yeah, still
Yeah.
6 volt, but with an alternator. Oh yeah, and talk
Okay.
about early cars. It came with the powerhouse generators as opposed to the standard tubular generators. The
Hmm.
early Model A's had one that was more of a larger diameter, flatter disc,
Okay.
like a stack of pancakes. They called the
Mhm.
powerhouse generators, and that's what came on it, and I still have it. But he got a 6 volt alternator. So as soon as you start the car, you give it a little shot of gas.
Mhm.
That increase in speed will engage the alternator, and you can tell your lights from running on the battery.
Oh,
They
brighten up. Yeah.
brighten up as soon as it starts to feed. So that's a really nice improvement. Other than that, I believe he added a higher speed rear end when he did his restoration, and he put a higher compression head on it. So yeah, it's definitely been tweaked in unnoticeable ways. Oh, and the front fenders are fiberglass.
No, I didn't hear that. It's okay.
No, we'll pretend I didn't say anything, but it's they were kind of plagued with, I guess, more of the roads of the time, but the wires that were going through the beads on
Yep.
the outside of those fenders would crack right along the little reinforcing things there. So you
I've
don't have to
made
worry about that, and they keep their shape is beautiful, and they you don't have to worry about a few stones going tick a tick because it's
yeah.
yeah.
Well, as long as you don't tell anybody and you don't let them touch it, there's no problem.
I'd hate for that information to get out there on the
Yeah, yeah,
internet.
yeah. We won't say nothing. Nothing you're saying here will end up on the internet.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, good. Nice weather we're having. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Well, that's great that you drive it a lot. I drive mine now and then, but just just now and then. But a T is a very different animal. It's
Well, that's right. Yeah.
they're quite slow and they're quite crude compared to Model A is really advanced, modern motor vehicle, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, it's there's
Yeah.
I had a neighbor uh when we were a few years back, he passed away as well, but he had a Model A, a nice 31 Roadster. I think it was a 31 beige. And he'd go by and eventually he ended up running out of gas right in front of our house one time. So we had a little chat.
Yeah.
But I talked to him about it once and I said, I was thinking maybe someday I'll buy a Model T. And he said, well, think long and hard about that because he's not going anywhere fast.
Yeah.
And just the brake setup and stuff. But they still have the aura. The Model T has an early, kind of close to the heart and cryptic aura that
Yeah.
the Model A has kind of stepped one over. It still has the beauty, but you can't really. Model T will always have its place.
Yeah. Yeah. They're super fun. They're just really hard to go a long ways on with. you got to really make plans and take your
Mm.
time and try not to get run off the road. Its top speed is
Yeah.
quite low.
So talk about top speed. What have you had it up to?
Um, well, I don't know how to answer that question. It's so I have had it up downhill to 75
Yeah.
kilometers per hour, but I'll never do it again, I don't think. And really, it's happy at 50 to 60 kilometers an hour. That's where it's
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
And any more than that, and things are shaking and roaring and grumbling, and yeah, it's not good. Now, I have mine's super original, like original heads, cast iron pistons, like
Yeah.
nothing has been upgraded with modern materials or anything. So it doesn't like to rev at all. Um, Original wooden coil boxes and
Yeah.
or magneto ignition, everything's bone stock original. So it's a puttering machine. It loves to putter along. The lower the revs, the happier it is.
Yeah. 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 Like the old tractors of the day, just straight line of torque.
Yeah.
RPM is just it's
Hmm.
funny. That's
Enormous flywheel, right? On the T.
yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. What's the weight of the T's flywheel?
I don't know the number. I can pick it up barely. But the thing is the whole transmission spins together.
Right.
So the flywheel effective weight is the whole transmission.
Right.
So it's enormous. And that's why it'll putt at low idle really nicely. Like a well-tuned
Yeah.
one. Mine still isn't tuned well enough to really just you click along, you can hear each cylinder firing on the really nicely running ones. They just tick, tick, tick. It's just so slow and smooth. It's gorgeous.
Have you tried that trick that the real picky fellows who tune them right to a top, you crank it until you know it's just after top dead center, and then you climb into the cab and hit the
Yeah, free start, they call
yeah,
that. Yeah, because it's a shower of sparks ignition. Whenever it's on the ignition timer, it'll be sparking constantly. So as long as you're just past top dead center, if you've got fuel in the cylinder, it'll fire over.
yeah.
Mine doesn't do it too often. I haven't got the best compression, and my I've got a lot of drag through my whole drivetrain that I'm still trying to work out. So it doesn't
Mm,
really want to um, just turn over freely on its own. I've had free starts and I can have them when everything's warmed up and that sort of thing. But um, for most of the time, I just use the hand crank to get the choking done and um, everything ready to go. And then I step on the electric start. Mine has the factory optional electric
nice.
start, and it
Yeah.
it fires right up from there.
Mm.
Yeah.
The Model A chassis that I built that doesn't have a body, that one is bone stock as well. I think yeah, now if I remember right as well, we're talking about tweaks and stuff. I believe it has the balanced crank
Okay. Yeah.
and therefore lightened flywheel.
Mhm.
But the other one that I built, it's completely factory with the 60 or 70, whatever it is, pound flywheel, non-balanced, but they idle so beautifully when you set
Yeah.
them right. Tekka, tekka, tekka,
Yeah.
tekka, tekka.
It's nice.
Yeah,
It's a
even
shame.
what's this?
It'd be a shame to put the light flywheel and everything if it won't idle like that. I don't know
Yeah,
if they lose that capability or if they
it's not the same, that's for sure.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I don't know if it loses it completely, but it doesn't have the same sound. Even running an original muffler, you can tell um something's not quite the same. I don't know, some sort of hocus pocus going on in there. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's funny. Even like bump starting it down the hill, the battery would goof up sometimes, and I just it's that one that I built is very cryptic because it doesn't even have a firewall, so the steering wheel it really shouldn't be set up how I have it set up. It has a Ford Taurus seat, so at least that's not sacrilegious. But the steering column goes down and it's only held by the two bolts on that one frame rail. And it
Yeah,
does this.
Yeah.
So I have to be kind of gentle, that I don't tweak it too bad. But when it dies, I can really shove it along and then hop on and fast enough dump
Jump
it
in
in
it.
gear, and just the slightest rotation,
Yeah, off it
it
goes.
starts. It doesn't
Uh,
miss anything.
So you still
And
have that chassis?
yeah, I still have that chassis. The
Yeah.
goal is someday to make it into a pickup truck.
Oh, okay.
That was the goal from day one, was to get a pickup truck. But availability of things, just got to kind of go with what you got.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's still sitting there, and I take it out once or twice a year just to make sure it's still happy, and get the oil moved around and the wheels off flat spots and so on. But the first time that I put it together, um, how did that go? I just put a video on the Cast Iron Machines Instagram about little backfire I had, because the first time was with an original manifold, and the Model A manifolds droop on the end that the muffler weighs down on with the
Okay.
cyclic heat and cooling. Your first cylinder will be level and your fourth ends up drooping. So when I put the manifold on, I didn't realize that the gaskets had not seated. They seated very poorly, and a bit of flame out of the exhaust went through the gasket kind of interface and out the intake, and just poof, kind of made me jump and chuckle at the same time. So ended up going with a new manifold, because they're made, and they're really nice. The new manifolds that are on the market are really worth it, and they're not that expensive. I think they're when I bought them, they were $95 US for a brand new cast exhaust manifold. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And they were good. They were inletted for the gland rings. They were uh, really good. So I just put a new one on it, and it improved significantly. And it was about this time of year. It was a warm day, maple syrup season, 4 or 5 degrees. It was a bit of wet outside. And so I took it out the road, getting it up into third gear. Fact, and going down the gravel road, there's no cab. All you have is there's not even a rad shell. It's just the bare bones. The coil is held on with zip ties to the fourth spark plug or something. Don't do this at home, kids type affair. Anyway, going down the road, and then I get to the end. Okay, got to turn around. I don't really want to go on the road because this is quite the contraption. And so I turn on the lawn. I didn't realize that the lawn had melted about, a few of the first inches. And so don't I go to back up on a bit of a downhill slope I'm facing up, and I let the clutch out while cranking this way. And I realized after the fact, while I was cranking, I was tweaking the whole steering column,
Yeah.
which was pulling the throttle linkage. And as I was turning, it was, and so when I let the clutch out, the wheels just spun, and I sank about 6 inches in the ground in the back in mud, and coated the whole beautiful Ford engine green. You might have noticed this hacksaw in a good brown mess. So yeah, it was fun though. I had to do the walk of shame back up to the house to get a tractor to pull it out.
Good to have a tractor for those times.
That's right.
Now, I'm sure we could talk about old cars all night, but I'm really curious about your shop and your machine tools. Could you
Sure.
give us a little introduction to what you're putting together here?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all kind of tied in the same realm, the cars in this shop. The part of the reason for this shop, I was hoping to be able to repair parts for that car in a traditional method. This shop is meant to represent a rural small town general repair shop from somewhere probably in the interwar period. So but between 1918, or some of the machines go way back as they normally did. It would have been kind of almost heirloom machines coming from old industry, being used for these smaller shops. And then some are a little bit newer. Maybe it was a more successful shop. We're able to buy stuff out of a catalog. Um, so this shop is normally run on an electric motor. I have I do have electricity coming into the shop, not a high service, so it's just enough to run a small quarter horsepower electric motor, which is bolted to the ceiling, and that's the pulley that you can see here. There's a red belt, and that's the motor to a large pulley as a reduction. So everything is ratios when it comes to line shafts. So the motor I know is turning at 1725 RPM, and line shafts you want to turn, depending on the size, the application, you want them to turn somewhere between 2 and 300 RPM normally. This is a somewhat small one, so it's maybe an inch and a quarter shaft. Or line shafts were measured on the 16th of an inch, because from the rolling mill you'd get bar that was to the eighth, so half, quarter, eighth. And once the bar was ground and polished, you lost that 16th of an inch. So when you bought line shafting back in the day, it was measured to the 16th. I was told that pulleys were measured to the eighth, so you'd get an undersized pulley so it would clamp, at least the wooden ones. I haven't read that yet though. So this one's set to run with a quarter motor. A lot of these shops, once they were established, it was economically effective to install a motor as opposed to get brand new machines or give machines independent motors. Okay, so I'll use this power hacksaw as an example. This is a Royersford Foundry Excelsior hacksaw. The Excelsior line that they had was a bunch of stuff. They made drill presses, hacksaws, a bunch of stuff. And they were made during what I'd consider the kind of transitional period where you could buy them in flat belt configuration. So it would come with a driver and an idler pulley. The idler is where it would normally idle. The belt would turn on your shaft, but the machine wouldn't run, and then you'd shift it, and there'd be a linkage that would move the belt over to the driving pulley, which was fixed to the shaft to make it run. They knew it was the transitional period. Line shafts were becoming obsolete. Electric motors were coming about. So they also offered it with a V-belt pulley coming off the same shaft, and they used the same linkage assembly to, or a slightly modified one to adapt it to have an electric motor hanging off the back. So of course the benefit of independent motors was it was much less of a power draw. You could completely isolate machines that were running from ones that weren't running. But you needed many small motors, and in the early days, electric motors were extremely costly and inefficient and cryptic. They weren't too dependable. So this one I have in flat belt configuration. It's really meant to be a V-belt electric, but aside from the shifting, the rest of it is identical. When you go back to the earlier days, they were designed only for flat belt, but during the updating period when electricity was coming about, 9 out of 10 camelback drill presses, like the blue one, you can see behind me there, guys would just take an electric motor, pull the flat belt pulleys off the back, throw a V-belt pulley on, and run it. Everything else was the same. When workman's safety regulations started to come around, they were still used, but a big mesh cage was put around the belting. That's the only difference. But they're really extremely robust designs, and they are meant to be repaired by the shop in which they are used, which is one of the aspects that really draws me to them. So, for example, the lineup of 3 machines here, make sure you can see at least parts. Yeah, okay, so we have the Burgundy lathe. That's a Myers, also made in Pennsylvania. It's 1915 production. It was a war production machine, light production, but they made tons of them for the first war effort. And if you look at my restoration video on that guy, there were some pretty rough castings that they used, and I'd be confident that if it wasn't the war, they would have said, back in the melting pot. But they were porous, but they still worked, and they said good enough to go for these circumstances. So the lathe tailstock that you can put drill bits in is a Morse Taper 3. That's the taper shank drill bits, large drills. So it and the Blue Barnes drill press have the same drill. And the tools, the little bits of steel that go in the lathe, and those drills can all be sharpened on the grinder. So between these three machines, they can basically keep themselves operating. If once you get a certain number of machines, you can use one of the selection to repair the other one in the case one ever goes down. And that I find it's very attractive. It's really these days with the way things operate, it doesn't make sense with the cost of time,
Mhm.
but it doesn't matter. I still find it quite soothing almost in a way to be able to repair one with the other.
It's a
So
self-sufficiency thing, yeah.
absolutely, yeah, it is. And all like if you get a brazing torch, a file, and whatever source, like you mentioned at the beginning of the video there, water power was mostly the initial way that these things worked. Then came animal power, so the sweep of an animal walking around with a gearbox and a shaft running along the ground, turning something. Then steam, of course, and then electric and internal combustion engines after that. So yeah, how about I fire it up for you?
Yeah, sure.
So I'll tweak the camera. I think you'll be able to see the drill. Yeah, in that current configuration, I'll show you the drill. So I have an electric box on the wall that runs this motor, and that the quarter horse motor is all right to run most small to medium sized operations on these machines. If you're taking big chips off, that won't cut it. It's going to start to slip, or the motor is going to have a bad day. So for a long time, I had a gas engine, a little flywheel Fairbanks Morse engine in that corner. Only 1.5 horsepower, but plenty to run any one of these machines, or multiple at the same time. For example, you could put a piece of shafting in the power hacksaw, set it to go, and then go about your business running the lathe. The power hacksaw has a catch on the bottom so that when it drops through the piece, it shuts itself off automatically. So a lot of these things are set like that. They have stops integrated because the machining processes were so slow. They have stops, so you can set things and forget them, set
Mhm.
and forget, but in a bit more of a cryptic manner. Anyway, yeah, so I'll hit the button. You'll see the thing start to spin on the ceiling, and then I'll explain some of the blue drill. Be forewarned, we've already kind of figured this out. I won't be able to hear you, so we'll see. We'll see how this works. So I'll get these things out of the way of that. The power hacksaw isn't belted up right now because it needs a few things finessed on it before it works properly. Um, yeah, let's see how this works. So now everything's running. This shaft with the reduction between 1725 and this is what is it? A 20 or so, 18 or 20-inch pulley. I end up with, I believe, 260 RPM on this line shaft here. So at the far side, there's a belt running down to the bottom of the drill press. In line shaft terminology, we have the main line, which is always turning at the same speed. Every machine has its respective counter shaft, and the counter shaft serves to turn each machine on and off. So in the case of the drill press, the counter shaft is integral. Cone pulleys are your changes in ratios for speed. So I have it at, if there's a small one down there, a large one up here, we're going slow. Large to small is inverse. So this is the second fastest speed. This particular drill has a commonality with a Model T, believe it or not. There's a planetary gear set hidden inside this cone pulley with a link that can come up and lock it. And so you have 8 speeds with a 4-step pulley because there's that hidden planetary. And so it's pretty impressive. And my goodness, does it turn slow when that's engaged? I'm sure you could drill a 3-inch hole. Just, it might take all day, but it would do it. So in the case of the drill, you turn it on and off with a pedal. There's some stuff in the way, but there's a shifting linkage. Normally this wouldn't be set up in the orientation that it is, but what can you do? So I'm going to push this. It's going to slide the belt over to the drive pulley, which is fixed to the bottom shaft. Now everything's turning. You can see there's another belt and pulley system here with 3 speeds. That's the power feed. So the back cone shaft, double gear set, that's running the drill. This is running a worm in here. I guess it's running another pair of miter gears. And when I engage them by lifting this lever, this worm turns and slowly descends the quill. So at the moment, this thing is drilling and power feeding itself. And again, I can step back, it'll do its work. It has a scale on the front of the quill here that shows you the depth. This one doesn't have a shut off. I have an Excelsior drill press, same as the same brand as the hacksaw. It does have stop, so you can walk away and it'll turn itself off. This one's not quite. This machine is the oldest one in the shop, from what I can tell. It's an 1883 patent date, with an 1894 edition of the power feed. And another benefit that my buddy Paul and I were discussing about this style of drill, you can rotate the table about the column, but the whole table also spins inside its socket. So if you have a piece of work mounted, say a cylinder head, for example, between spinning it about the column and about itself, you can almost use it like a radial arm drill to line up a sequence of holes in different area while keeping the whole thing clamped in the same manner. This crank here is what raises and lowers the table. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a chain attached to the quill and it goes down and inside the column. There's a big cast iron weight in the center of that column to balance. So it's effectively balancing the weight of this quill so it takes minimal effort to move this handle up or down. Also, as this thing wears, you have 2 collars here that can take up the end plate. So it has roller bearings and a bronze kind of bottom piece here. And as it wears, you can adjust it until you run out of thread, which would be many 100 years probably. So I'll go ahead and turn this one off. This one was, like I was mentioning, one of the electric conversions. I didn't have the matching set of pulleys. So as long as you have 2 of the same diameter, outer diameter pulleys, you can bore the inside whatever, and then between the ratio of your main line and those, you can figure out your speeds. And the linkage, the pedal linkage was also gone, so I forged 2 forks and the pedal out of railroad spikes. This little fellow on the table, it has some stuff on it, but it's a horizontal milling machine. It's missing parts, which is unfortunate, but it came from a foundry in Morrisville, Vermont. On top of it, it's too big for the machine, but this is a dividing head with the plates. There's a spare one here. They have all these different sets of holes for doing different divisions, mostly for making gears. There's one crank used for everything, so that's your in and out. This is your up and down, and then there's one on the end for back and forth. This one from the factory had a power feed with a stop, but it's pretty goofed up. It's kind of on the chopping block. I'm not sure if it's going to survive because space, as you can see, is pretty valuable. We'll go to the grinder. Oh yeah, also beside it here, we have one of the smallest forged blacksmith legs vices that I've come across. It's got a tiny little 4-inch face on it, and it's beautifully done. Everything's chamfered, a little bend in here, and I'll have to forge a mounting plate, but that's a really cute little piece that has to be restored someday soon. So onto the grinder. This is a pedestal grinder in the truest of ways. I bought it down in Port Perry, and that fellow, Art Powell, who has also since passed away, he was a machinist. He made out of what are these? Brake drums? Yeah, I guess technically these guards are brake drums. and he made these tool rests. They're very tastefully done. It fits so well. I never would have thought they were just salvaged. He was a General Motors tool and die maker. So it had an electric motor on it, but thankfully still had the flat belt pulley. I assembled the counter shaft for this out of parts. The bearings are thick-walled pipe with babbitt poured into them, and a tight and loose pulley or a driver and idler pulley off of an old scrapped band saw. And this machine, because of how fast it needs to turn, it basically takes everything that this line shaft system can offer with a little quarter horse. So I'm going to give it a little shimmy to get it going. Oh, also you can notice here a beautiful Monarch rubber logo. It's the original logo from the belt maker. So I'm going to kind of persuade it, and then I will shift this lever. These forks are moving the belt over to the fixed pulley, and now it's accelerating. So there we go. I have coarse wheel, fine wheel, a matching truing device with the little spiky wheels. You can run it across when it gets out around. This one's Hamilton, Canada, Desmond Company. So the name on it, Petrie. Many people thought that Petrie was just a distributor. For example, they have their name tag on that Excelsior hacksaw, but from a few examples, including this one, it seems that they had enough popularity to probably reach out to a local foundry in Hamilton, likely, and do a production run with their own name cast into the piece. So Petrie's Special. And it's kind of funny if you look at it. The two E's are different fonts. The I is probably a number 1. So it was a little bit cryptic, but it really is a beautiful and sturdy piece. Onto the lathe, I'm going to move your point of view over to get a full grasp of it, because the lathe is a really neat piece. The lathe is particularly interesting in that you have 2 directions with one counter shaft. I'm not sure if you can tell here, but I'll explain it anyway. There's one belt running straight off of the main line, and there's one belt running with a half twist off the line. And the counter shaft, which has same stepped distance cone pulleys like we were talking about on the drill press, has 2 idlers that are independent. And right now they're both idling. We don't have necessarily an idle and drive like on the grinder. We have 2 idlers, and they're engaged with an outward extending brake drum on the inside. And you do that with this lever. You can engage one or the other based on forward or reverse, like what you need. I mentioned before, this is a 1915 lathe, but it's reasonably complex for its time and its mass production level, if you will. So it's a 10-inch, 5-foot bed lathe. It's manual, manual change gears. So there's this little stack of gears over here, and there's a chart on one of the legs that tells you the combination of gears that you need to get a set pitch. So the ratio between the turning of the chuck and the advancing of the carriage will give you 4 threads per inch or 16 or however much, based on the ratio of gears that you put together. So that's kind of the old way of running these things with change gears. I'll engage this belt. Also, where that machine had a planetary inside the cone pulley, this one has what's called a back gear. And all you do is disconnect the coupling from the main cone to the main shaft, and then you rock with a kind of eccentric cam, a reduction gear system into it. So it's no longer directly connected. You're going from cone to back gear to chuck. So that's how you decrease the speed in these old lathes. The other thing that is kind of a technique to ponder is these guys were working in shops with massively high ceilings, 20 foot, 30 foot, in big old warehouses. And you had to figure out how to change your speed on the belt from down here. And the cone pulleys were way up there. So the way you do it is you kind of walk the belt across, down one and push while maintaining this one's on this pulley, down one and then up one, and it'll grab. And so you walk it across based on what speed you are looking for. So reduce that one, increase this one. So I will engage lead screw, which is this threaded rod here, and this is what controls the different functions of the carriage. So forward is this way. So now it's running forward speed. What are we doing? Large, small to large. So we're going at the slowest speed in direct drive. It would be much slower with the back gear engaged. You might be able to tell this is spinning because there's a key, a notch that runs down it for a key. The features of the carriage are this end lever is called the half nut. It's basically a screw that's cut in half and it locks onto the lead screw, and that's for threading. So if I engage this, you can see now the carriage is advancing at a pretty good rate. That is based on the ratio of gears on the other side. So we could be cutting a thread, cutting a bolt, something like that right now. There's also a small wheel here, which is a clutch. So when I tighten it, the carriage is now moving very slowly. This is for going across the outside of a piece and doing it consistently so it looks nice and smooth. If I disengage that, most small lathes like this didn't have it, but this one does. It's a power cross feed for facing. So if you want to go across the face of something in a consistent manner, you push in this little stop here. And this gear was exploded when I got this lathe. I think someone ran it to the end and just let it keep going. It exploded. It made a mess of itself. So thanks to the machine shop at Carleton University, who were very into tinkering with the old manual things, they helped me rebuild that gear. So go ahead, push that in. Now you can see this crossfeed handle moving on its own. So for a basic small lathe, I find that pretty impressive. The tailstock is simple. There's a dead center in it right now, but if I want to put it a little bit, I can get whatever size. And this racking here is inspired by David Richards' Steam Machine Shop, old steam powered machine shop on YouTube. I don't know, can you notice the artifacts here as well?
Yeah.
This is more your era, that's more mine. So the taper drills have a shank on the end. Some machines have this to drive them more solidly. That drill has it, this lathe doesn't. And then this taper, you got to make sure it's good and clean. And then there's the female taper in here. When you jam them together, as long as force is applied straight into them, they effectively lock. Whoop. Oh, geez. This lathe has been used so much that the female taper has been reamed step by step, and now it's quite deep. There we go. Now it's stuck in there, and then the way to remove it is to spin it to the end, and then it pops out. So these are Morse Taper 3 machines. You can go Morse Taper 4, 2, 1, all different taper shank sizes. This is a Morse Taper 4, a 2-inch bit, for example. Pretty big lab. So that's about it for this. Oh yeah, and of course, if I run this lever the other way, you can also use it as a quick stop. So if it's running forward and you're about to have a catastrophe, you can kind of ram it into reverse and pull it quickly, or pull it all the way and now you have full speed reverse. Now that I can hear you again,
Yeah,
what do you
yeah,
say?
no, that was great. That was very clear and
Good.
fascinating. Now, all of these machine tools you've restored yourself, right?
Yes, sir. With the exemption of this blue drill, it's pretty well as I got it. The drill press was the first real machine to come in this shop. The forge was the first item, and then there's a hand crank drill on the other wall, a good old that style, which I used in the forging. That was the first proper machine to come in,
Mhm.
and it's as is. It's on the list, but because it runs so well, I figure restore something that's completely dilapidated before I do that one. Even though that one would be an easier restoration because nothing's seized on it.
Yeah.
The Burgundy lathe, that was an entire winter project. That was a COVID winter while I was at university. So I was studying and then tinkering with that in free time. So the grinder is the most recent restoration. It was over a week or so in the summer. But that lathe was quite a learning curve. I unloaded. I went down to Brockville to pick it up, unloaded it from the bed of a truck outside the door of this shop here alone, and it's probably a 700 or 800 pound lathe. And I dropped the bed into the snowbank when we had full scale winter. um, I had taken the headstock, tailstock carriage, everything was off. It was just the legs and the bed, and I whoop, and I got out of the way. Didn't want to be on the wrong end of it, and it went bonk into the snowbank, and I couldn't do anything to lift it because it would just slide on the ice. So I got the hammer out, jammed two spikes in below the legs, tied a ratchet strap to the bed, and ratchet strapped it to the awning on this shop to pull it back upright, and then slid it in here on boards. So, oh yeah, there goes the clock. I don't know if you could hear that. That was a nice flea market find this summer. Mm.
So you've got enough machine tools now that you can more easily restore more machine tools. I can see how this is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, yes, that's the beauty and also the danger.
Yep. And now,
Yeah.
have you done any of your hoped for Model A repairs in your period shop yet?
I always do little things in here, but I haven't really had a full out machining job to do with any of these machines. Let me, what have I done? No, I don't think I have had to do, thankfully, anything on the Model A's. I've rebuilt a distributor, but that was more bench work and hand
Yeah,
tools.
yeah.
Um, the shaft that's left over in the power hacksaw right now is a windmill project, an old style water pumping
Okay.
agricultural windmill. So, the machines are used to do things. I used the lathe earlier this summer to bore out a pulley for a wood planer. Um, what else? The grinder hasn't seen much use yet. It's quite fresh. That drill, it did some work on the windmill as well. That drill is also neat. You won't be able to see it from here, but they mounted a dead center to the bottom, to the absolute bottom of it, a brass dead center. And we believe that was for turning banister posts. So you
Okay.
could put a block of wood in there and use that as a vertical lathe.
Vertical lathe.
It
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be pretty cryptic and you'd need to make a good tool rest, but it's a cool idea, the adaptations that were made for these things.
Well, that machine's so capable. I mean, you've got power feed, counterbalanced hand feed. With
Yeah,
the
the
Morse taper, you
reduction.
can mount anything you want. Gear reduction up in like incredible amount of gear reductions. You can cut really big holes if you need to. And
Yeah.
it looks like a really stiff casting. So I bet you it works better than most modern drill presses. Only the big,
Yeah,
heavy machine tool ones would be any better.
I would be leaning that way for sure. Yeah, the difficulty with modern ones too is how the speed ratios with the little V belts that are in the
They don't
top
go
for
slow
twos.
enough. No,
No, they never go slow
they
for
never go
metalwork.
slow
You end
enough.
up burning your bits.
Yeah, I find every time I want to use a drill press, I don't because I end up putting it on the mill because I can get it to go slow enough. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I hear you. Well,
Yeah.
that's amazing. I think we're definitely coming to the end of the time that we allotted, Clay, but I'm sure we could probably set up another time in the future and keep talking because there's about a million things
Sure.
I'd like to ask about and see. I know you're doing a lot of steam work. I saw you rebuilding some steam governors.
Yeah, yeah, they're I don't know if you can see from here, they're up on that top.
Oh, the red balls. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
can just see them. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
so there's lots to talk about, but we'll save that for another time.
Sounds good.
So thank you so much for coming on Flivver Channel and talking to me today, showing me around your shop. And
Yeah, pleasure.
ho-
Thanks for the invite.
hopefully we can meet up with our cars sometime, or next time I'm up Ottawa way, I'll look you up and maybe pop out to the shop. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Yeah, it's only 12 hours from here to your place by Model T.
Not so bad. Bring your
Everything.
picnic basket, you'll be here in no time.
Yeah, I always judge distances by how long it'll take in a Model T. It changes things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to remind viewers, check out Clay and his YouTube channel. For you can see videos of his restorations, his car, his music. Um, it's Cast Iron Machines on YouTube and same on Instagram. All kinds of great little mini videos and photos, Cast Iron Machines. So make sure you check it out and follow Clay. And hopefully, we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate that there, Stephen. Pleasure to be on. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, Clay. Have a great night.
Take care.
Bye.